It all comes back to money.
This is the Keeping Your Money Show with Jamie Westenbarger and Bart Steindler.
All right, welcome back to Keeping Your Money Show. Jamie Westenbarger, joined as always by Bart Steindler. If you're just tuning in, we gave you the reasons you're not rich and the reasons that'll blow up your retirement. And some of them kind of overlapped a little bit.
Another one of our theme shows.
And, I hope we don't, I don't ever want to sound like we're like preaching or, that we're like criticizing or being critical, because I get it. I know it's tough. You want to take the family on vacation just like everybody else does. And, you want to get a car that actually can drive through the snow, and, you want a nicer house and a better school district. I mean, I get all of that. And I'm not saying that we should all live in the smallest house possible in the terrible neighborhood with the cruddy car and, just for the sake of making sure you save for retirement. But I think there's also that point where that's not what we see. We don't necessarily see people just stepping up a level. We see people maybe stepping up 3 or 4 levels, and if they would pause in the middle there to make sure the retirement savings was taken care of, they'd be in a lot better shape later on.
Well, yeah, and whenever I talk about a budget, I think it's really important to budget some fun money in there.
Absolutely.
Because you got to enjoy your life along the way.
Yeah, and if you don't, let's face it, it's like the diet where you just go, I am, I was watching Shark Tank the other day, and these ladies were selling this soup diet, and Mark Cuban wrinkles up his face and he goes, do people actually eat soup every day? That sounds horrible. But he's right? I mean, for a couple weeks, you could probably stomach it, and, you'd start to see some results. You're looking a little svelte or whatever. But, man, you're going to break eventually. And when you do, it's going to be hardcore. You're going to be in there with the T-bone and the cheesecake and you know what I mean? And you're going to just sabotage everything you just, for the last 3 weeks, did. Well, same thing.
Everything's got to be in balance.
If you sock everything into your 401k and never do anything fun, you're going to go off the deep end at some point in time, and you're going to splurge way beyond what you would have had you just kind of budgeted some fun in there. So I completely agree. But if you miss any part of the show, I do want to remind you can find it on our website. Go to keepingyourmoney.com. And, of course, you can always call us. Our toll-free number is 888-98-MONEY, 888-986-6639, and we don't take phone calls on the air, but we do have someone answer those all the time. So feel free to give a call anytime on that. So we have talked about modern portfolio theory a number of times on the show.
Right.
And for anyone that's not familiar or hasn't heard us talk about it, it was developed in the 50s. The idea behind it is to demonstrate the utility of diversification. So when you think about the idea of asset diversification, where you should have this percentage in stocks and this percentage in bonds and some overseas and all, that comes from this gentleman, Harry Markowitz, who won a Nobel Prize for designing the concept of modern portfolio theory. Now, it is what the investment world that you know of, the world of advice, is built on modern portfolio theory. I mean, when you look at fiduciary standards, compliance standards, how people invest their money, so much of it revolves around asset diversification. If you're 80 years old and you want to put all your money in small cap, investments, there are going to be a lot of red flags that come up all over the place when you try and do that, because they don't think, based on modern portfolio theory, that that's a good idea for you, right? Mm-hmm. We have said for a number of years that a lot of aspects of modern portfolio theory kind of got messed up with the 2008 correction. And that is because they kind of got hammered, stocks got hammered, and then bonds and stocks have kind of risen in unison with one another over the last 10 years for the most part. And that's the opposite of what is behind the idea of modern portfolio. The idea is that bonds and stocks are non-correlated. They run usually opposite of one another. So if you're balanced in your investment strategy, you're less likely to lose money in a down market. So Barron's puts out this article talking to our boy, Markowitz, he's up there now, 90 years old.
Our boy Markowitz. That sounds like a great name for like a TV show or a play, you know?
But what I thought was interesting about it is they're talking to him and they're talking about the construction of his own portfolio. And I'm not going to get into what he's buying or selling because that's not what we do here. But what I will tell you is he's not taking his own advice. He has decided that he doesn't need bonds in his portfolio, and 100% of his liquid assets are in the stock market, which is not a recommendation by any stretch of the imagination of what you should be doing with your own portfolio. Please do never take advice based on what you hear on the radio. But it was shocking to me that the father of asset allocation is not very asset allocated.
No, he says, it took a while to realize the money in my IRA that should be working just like the ones out of my IRA, and then it's a company name, and my Social Security essentially is fixed income. But everything else that's liquid, I moved from bonds. I had a couple of million. In other words, he had a couple of $1 million of bonds in his portfolio, and he sold them and went into equities.
Right.
And he's the father of modern portfolio theory, which is basically saying that you should
not do that.
That, your balanced portfolio is roughly, 60% equities, 40% bonds.
So what I find the funniest about this is if you had him as a client and you put all of his money into stocks
at his age,
compliance, whether your compliance department or the SEC or whoever would actually kick that back and say, this is not okay based on modern portfolio theory.
No, this is not appropriate for an advisor to advise to an elderly client.
Based on the theory he designed.
Right.
Which is kind of ironic, right?
Yeah.
But the whole point of why I bring this up is there's something that we do, and we do this in a lot of ways, right? But we romanticize ideas. We take ideas that we've heard, and because we've heard them enough, they become the absolute truth. They become laws by which we live our lives by, right? Mm-hmm. So prior to 2008, everyone was always told, you pay off your house as soon as you possibly can, right? Mm-hmm. And that comes from two things. One, interest rates were really high. Mm-hmm. And two, prior to the Great Depression, mortgages were callable, meaning they could actually say pay it or move out.
Right.
So it generated a fear of, at least I'll always have my house, right?
And because of that, today we still have people who are coming in to see us, and they'll have a 3.5% or 4% rate on their mortgage, and they want to pay it off early, which isn't always a bad thing. It depends on your individual situation.
But if it's based off of something you've just been told that doesn't necessarily apply anymore, they can be horrible.
Right.
So then 2008 comes along, interest rates tank. Now mortgages are, at that time 3%. Now they're all of 5%, which is still ridiculously low. And so this thing that we held to be true for decades, maybe not so much true anymore. We heard CDs are a safe place to put your money. Again, 2008, no interest, terrible place to put your money. Safe, sure, but you're guaranteed to lose spending power every single year because it's not keeping up with inflation.
Sure. Look at the risk in municipal bonds today compared to the risk in municipal bonds 50 years ago.
Well, and not to concentrate on one asset class, because I think you could say that about anything.
Right.
Things change.
Right.
Something that was considered ultra safe maybe isn't anymore.
Right.
You talk about municipals. I mean, we talk about the amount of debt that these cities carry.
Right.
I wouldn't say their claims paying ability is as great as maybe it was 50 years ago.
Right.
And then you flip that over. The stock market has roared. The bond market has roared. What is your risk return scenario in certain asset classes? All that to just be saying, you have to realize, I've been in this business almost 20 years. 20 years in February. And in that time, I will tell you that there have been at least 4 moments where significant things that were thought to be law, as far as the way money works, have changed. Changed drastically. And because of that, if you're just an average investor and you're plugging along with things that you think to be true, this article alone proves Mr. Markowitz, he changed his mind on a theory you're probably still investing in. Now, that's not to say you should ever go out and put 100% of your money in stocks. He mentions he has real estate and some of these other things to offset some of that risk. But the point being, never is anything always black and white when it comes to this type of stuff. There's always gray. There's tons of gray. And it's really important to look at that. I'll give you a perfect example. You know, when I first came into the business, I remember hearing people say all the time, PE ratio, price to earnings ratio. Mm-hmm. When it starts getting in the double digits, you got to be a little cautious because very few companies can withstand a price to earnings ratio in the double digits. The average company doesn't have growth for that, right? Well, what happened? The internet happened. And the internet threw everything out of whack because the growth possibility of the internet and internet companies became astronomical over these old, stalwart, factory-based companies that really never grew that much, right? Mm-hmm. Today, it's unheard of to see a company with any kind of growth potential with a single-digit PE ratio. That's crazy. You never see that.
No.
And so here was something less than 20 years ago that was considered a rule of thumb to never go past, that now people would laugh at you if you told them that was your theory.
Right.
It just shows you that things change. You need to change with them, or you definitely face the possibilities of not being ready for retirement. All right, remember, you can always give us a call. 888-98-MONEY is the number, 888-986-6639. Coming up, we're going to talk about 4 ways to avoid charity scams this holiday season.
The ups and downs of a roller coaster are fun for some people, but maybe too nerve-wracking for others. The same is true for the ups and downs of the stock market. If your palms sweat when the market fluctuates, it may be time to reevaluate your investment choices. The ride to your financial future shouldn't keep you awake at night. Call the Keeping Your Money Show at 1-888-98-MONEY to get off the roller coaster and onto solid ground.